Afternoon. I'd like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples throughout Australia as the traditional custodians of our country and give my respect to the elders past, present and emerging. I'm incredibly privileged to be here on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I do thank Uncle Alan last night and Brendan this morning for welcoming us here on their country. I'm Maxine Cooper, Chair Landcare ACT and Deputy Chair National Landcare Network. And like my fellow speakers who you'll hear from in a minute, Karissa Preuss, CEO Landcare ACT, and Miranda Gardner, Director ACT Commissioner for Sustainability and the Environment, I live on Ngunnawal land. Landcare ACT is privileged to have, and I better get the right image up. Oh, we don't have the Bradley sisters? Right. I'm just searching for a little... We're just going to get the right image.
That's yours?
No, we're not.
Sorry, just go back one again.
Not the Bradley sisters yet. Right. Okay, Landcare ACT is very privileged to have Uncle Wally Bell, the person shown here, who's a Ngunnawal custodian, as our board member. He is shown in this image sharing his cultural knowledge. Also shown is Aboriginal artwork at Guba Darra, meaning ochre ground, which is an important, cultural site that Uncle Wally played a key role in saving from urban development. Uncle Wally's activities, like many other ACT land carers, epitomises what today's talk's about, building health, wealth and resilience, all being the key benefits of land care. Landcare ACT supports and promotes the activities of over 6,000 volunteers that make up 70 plus land care groups. As shown on this image, we have 5 founding members. And I must say a few of them are in the audience, and I'm terribly pleased they're here, of which 3 catchment groups, all of who are represented in the audience today, have just recently been given ongoing financial support from the ACT government. This was a major achievement resulting from a collective effort of these groups and Landcare ACT. The ACT is particularly fortunate to have the ACT Commissioner for Sustainability and the Environment, whose mandate, as shown on this image, is to promote community engagement. Coincidentally, this office was established about 30 years ago, the same time as the emergence of the land care movement, and it's only one of 2 offices in Australia, the other being in Victoria. I had the honour of being a former commissioner. The Commissioner's Office recently produced the ACT Environmental Volunteers Showcasing Volunteer Environmental Work Report. Much of the work for this report is to be credited to Miranda Gardner, who will discuss why the report was done, how it was done and what it found. And no doubt her decades of hands-on land care experience assisted her in developing this report. Following Miranda, you'll hear from Karissa, whose energy to support and promote our local land carers is endless. Karissa will outline the diversity of activities undertaken that are the foundations for what is reported in the Commissioner's report and are critical in shaping our future and us. Canberra's landscape in the last 100 years has transitioned from limited vegetation cover to now having a coverage that earns it the title of the bush capital. This is a mixed blessing as it provides the opportunity for diverse land care activities, as Karissa will outline, but it requires significant care. Providing this care will become more challenging, for as we've heard in our conference so far, the Australian State of the Environment Report 2021 paints a grim picture. Our environment's under extreme pressure. The general outlook is our environment is deteriorating. Climate change is affecting every aspect of our environment, and the environmental decline affects our well-being. Pretty grim. While the findings of that report lead to feelings of sheer miserableness, as indicated in the quotes here, Be assured that Landcare plays a critical role, as we've also heard from other speakers, in meeting our environmental challenge and providing that antidote to despair about the environment. The values of being a land carer are many, as shown in Figure 1. That figure, by the way, was taken from Building Resilience in Local Communities, the Wellbeing Benefits of Participating in Land Care, a report by PKMG and Landcare Australia. Right now, more than ever, as we've all heard, we need all land carers. We need all land carers hands on deck to save our planet and ourselves. Now, to hear the value of the Landcare hands that are at work in the ACT, I'm going to hand over to Miranda to talk about that fantastic report that her and her office produced. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Maxine. So, as Maxine said, I work for the Commissioner for Sustainability and the Environment in the ACT, and basically the Commissioner's function is to make sure that the environment's being managed properly. And she does that through investigating matters which anybody can basically come to the Commissioner and ask that something is looked into if they see something that they're a bit concerned about. So that's a really useful function to have, and one that takes us into contact with the community a lot. Another important function of the Commissioner is to write the ACT State of the Environment report. And that was really where this Environmental Volunteers report came about, because when the 2019 State of the Environment report was written, the Commissioner's office realised that it was quite difficult to get data about environmental volunteering in the ACT. Everybody knew that it was happening a lot, but it was difficult to get those statistics about exactly what it was. So we came up with this report, which was initially to fill this gap in data, but it ended up also being about celebrating and recognising ACT volunteers. This group here is my local land care group, doing some Patterson's curse removal. And so we looked at citizen science and wildlife care volunteering, as well as on-ground land care type volunteering. I'm not going to talk about wildlife care in this presentation, but if you would like to know more about that, please head to the report website. You can find out about it. And citizen science is very integrated with land care in the ACT because we have a lot of retired scientists who go out and do their thing. When we talk about difficulty getting hold of data, this image shows a bit of why that is. So here you can see in the middle of the diagram those four groups: Frogwatch, Urban Land Care, Waterwatch and Park Care. Those are four of the main volunteer programs in the ACT. There are dozens more that would sort of orbit this diagram and connect into it as well, but that would be a very busy slide. So these programs, as you can see, have a community support component and a government support component. The government is the landowner and land manager in all the land that volunteers in the ACT work on, so they always have to be involved to some degree. And which part of government you work with as a land care volunteer depends on whether your patch is an urban park or part of Canberra Nature Park, which is nature reserves. And you can see in the picture that the lines between city services and parks and conservation and ACT NRM only go to one volunteer program. So when we went to the government asking for their data, we had to go to multiple different parts of government. There wasn't one central place where all of that came together. So that's partly what we've tried to do here. It's a bit of a different story in the community side. So the catchment groups in the ACT are geographically based rather than on land tenure. There's 3 catchment groups, as Maxine has mentioned, and they each look after all the groups and volunteers within their geographic area. So that's more of a place where there's a bit of cross-pollination happening. And then we also have ACT NRM in there, which is the natural resource management body in the ACT, and they provide funding to the catchment groups for volunteer support, and they also support the Waterwatch program, which is a very successful long-term water quality data citizen science program in the ACT that underpins a lot of other work. And then over the top of the catchment groups, we have Landcare ACT, which brings leadership and adds value at that strategic level and does a lot of talking to bureaucrats on behalf of the volunteers. So Maxine spoke about the benefits of land care that have been broadly identified. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we found in the ACT specifically. I'll start this off by saying that when we did some workshops to start the report going, one of the first things we were told was volunteers don't want to be a statistic, they just want to work. So we recognise that the kinds of people who go out to do Landcare don't want to spend time filling in spreadsheets and surveys. So caveat that we were sort of working with that in there. But we know that government funders and those sorts of people do like data and statistics and numbers. So we thought it was useful to collect the data for that reason and to go into the State of the Environment report. So just at the most basic level, we found that we have over 307,000 hours per year of volunteer time contributed in the ACT, and if that was to be paid, it would cost over $21.5 million every year. We also applied the formula in the KPMG Landcare Australia report that Maxine referenced to our volunteers, and we calculated based on that there would be over $13 million in avoided healthcare costs per year from Landcare. So that's great. We also identified a number of other benefits which were less quantifiable but just as important. So this is things like the knowledge contributions of citizen scientists, which in the ACT are actually quite commonly used to inform government policy and programs and activities. We have the expertise of volunteers because, as I said, a lot of retired scientists and professional conservationists. And there's also the eyes and ears factor, which is the fact that there's so many volunteers out there on the ground. They pick up on things that the rangers don't have capacity to. That's really valuable, hard to quantify. And if you want to find out more about some of those, you can look at the stories section of our website. And then in the future, we'd like to look in more detail into some of these other benefits identified on education and engagement and the grants and other financial benefits that volunteering brings in, accessing money and funding that is not available to the government in any other way. So, yeah, a bit more to do there, but it was a good start. So I'll now hand over to Karissa to talk about some case studies of specific projects.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about 4 case studies. Let me just click this. That flesh out the value of Landcare in the ACT. So the first is urban landscape restoration. So as Maxine and Miranda have said, there's over 70 different Landcare groups operating in the ACT, and the majority of these are urban Landcare groups. And these urban Landcare groups are quite diverse. From the photo that you can see on the left there of a very urban group situated in the city, and these people are out there planting trees, doing weed control to improve these small but special green places within the city. On the other end of the spectrum, there's the photo on the right of a nature reserve. And so within the ACT, there's nature reserves, sometimes many hectares in size, many hundreds of hectares in size. And these land carers or park carers are often looking after threatened ecological communities such as box gum woodland and natural temperate grassland. So Landcare ACT partnered with the University of Canberra to do some research about the motivations and benefits of urban volunteers. And through this, we found that by being involved in urban environmental volunteering, Landcare has gained a sense of hope, particularly by having an opportunity to have an active role in addressing climate change at a local level and biodiversity loss at a local level. The research also found that Landcare has gained knowledge and skills that they didn't have before, and importantly gained a greater sense of connection to the local place and to other people who are also involved. So this sense of social connectedness, all with wellbeing outcomes. So this research, which has just been conducted recently, these are the preliminary findings, found that 97% of environmental volunteers felt that they had mental health wellbeing benefits that came from being involved. So clearly what we're finding is that urban landscape restoration builds ecological resilience, and it also builds individual resilience. The second case study is focused on disaster resilience and with a focus on bushfire recovery. So within the ACT, the Black Summer bushfires affected 87,000 hectares, and 80% of this was in the much-loved Namadgi National Park. So in response to the bushfires, almost 1,000 people put up their hand to be involved in Landcare-led recovery efforts. So Landcare ACT, with a number of other community Landcare organisations, work together to increase the resilience of these affected areas. So in one example, Southern ACT Catchment Group, one of the local Landcare networks, mobilised and engaged community volunteers to improve alpine bogs, a threatened ecological community. And so environmental volunteers were engaged with researchers, with ecologists, and with local Landcare groups to take action on weeds that were threatening the natural regeneration, as well as to do some erosion control to improve water quality, and also to do some ecological monitoring to support the natural regeneration of these areas. So we've seen that Landcare provides a cost-effective, agile and responsive approach to disaster recovery. And we've been hearing about this a lot last night and again throughout the day today. But what's special about the Landcare approach to bushfire recovery is that it not only has environmental outcomes, it also has personal wellbeing outcomes for those who have been involved. And that's what we've been hearing from the volunteers that have been involved in this program. The photo on the right was from the recent National State of the Environment report, and Landcare does have a key role to play in addressing these environmental issues. I won't go into any more detail of that, given we're running out of time. The next case study is about cultural leadership and resilience. So Landcare ACT and our member catchment groups work closely with the local Ngunnawal people, in particular Wally Bell, who we've spoken about. So the Landcare community in the ACT has now run over 600 different cultural interpretive walks. So in these walks, Ngunnawal elders, and particularly Wally, have described the cultural landscape and how the Aboriginal community have used and cared for these areas for many hundreds of years or thousands of years, and the ongoing relationship that Ngunnawal people have with their ancestral country. And this is even in very highly modified urban areas. These walks have helped the broad community to understand the cultural landscape that we're all living on, and also help to ensure that land carers are not inadvertently having cultural heritage impacts when they go about their day-to-day work. The last case study is about the new Landcare ACT Wellbeing Through Nature program. So this program we developed based on growing international national research around the multiple values of land care. So the goals of this program was developed with various other community, environmental and mental health organisations, including our key partner Wellways. So the goals of this program are to improve the mental health of individuals with lived experience of mental health, and also to increase the social connectedness of Canberrans. And this is through the delivery of nature-based activities. And it's supported by the ACT government's health promotions campaign. The Landcare ACT Wellbeing Through Nature program was launched late last year, and both the ACT Minister for Health and the Minister for Environment spoke at the event. The program's targeted at culturally and linguistically diverse communities, LGBTQIA+, Aboriginal communities, as well as younger generations and older generations. So far, there's been 19 guided walks that have been led by a skilled wellbeing coordinator, and also 7 conservation activities that link individuals with local landcare groups and together work on looking after country. And already, less than a year in, we're finding this program's having the anticipated outcomes. So the University of Canberra is conducting some external research, and preliminary analysis of surveys have found that 93% of participants have felt that the program's improved their mental wellbeing. So clearly, being involved in landcare can and does improve the mental health and wellbeing of participants. So through this presentation, we've shown the multiple values of landcare, including the health, both the health of the environment, as well as the mental health of volunteers. We've shown the wealth, so that the $21.5 million of the contribution that environmental volunteers make in their in-kind hours within the ACT, as well as the $13 million of avoided healthcare costs. And we've also talked about resilience, of how landcare is supporting nature to recover from natural disasters such as bushfire recovery, and helping urban landscapes to cope with the impacts of climate change, as well as creating increased personal resilience for those who are involved. Can I just finish? We wanted to finish with this quote from John Scarr, futurist. And many of you will be familiar with the start of this quote. The future is not some place we're going, but one we're creating. The second part is less commonly known. The paths are not to be found, but made, and the activity of making them changes both the maker and the destination. This quote shows that Landcare is not just about changing the future environment, but by being involved in Landcare, we're also creating something new together. And by doing this, we're changing ourselves. And what we've shown is this change is overwhelmingly positive.
Thank you so much.